The first time I made 7 figures in a year, you think that's cause for celebration. I felt horrible. I felt like I wasn't worthy of it. I felt like it was bad. Do you understand how insane that is?
Meet JM Ryerson,
international speaker,
co-founder of Let's Go Win, and best-selling author.
Having a growth mindset, in my opinion, is the basis of everything. People don't like change. But you know what everybody loves? Everybody loves an upgrade. We upgrade our cell phones almost on a yearly basis. What we're doing is we're saying there's nothing wrong with my iPhone, 14, but do I want the 15? Is it a little bit faster, a little bit better? Yeah. If you figure out how to upgrade, guess what? You can change your story, change your life in every single way, but it's going to start with...
I love that. I'm totally stealing it. Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Unlock Your Potential. Jeff Lerner, your host. Always so thrilled to be back with you, having amazing conversations with amazing human beings. Today, we are joined by JM Ryerson, who I got to know a few months ago, actually, as a guest on his show, and we had a great conversation, and I asked if he would pop over to our show and be a guest here as well. JM is a seasoned entrepreneur, over 2 decades of experience. He has built and sold, well, he has sold 3 businesses. He might have built more than that. I suppose he'll tell us. He's also now the co-founder and CEO of Let's Go Win, which is a leadership and consulting company focused on team dynamics and business professional transformation. He's also a speaker. He has, as I mentioned, the Let's Go Win podcast. He's an author, best-selling book, Let's Go Win, The Keys to Living Your Best Life. Lots more I could probably say, but JM, I'd rather get into it with you, man. How are you? And
Brother, I'm blessed, man. So glad to be on your show. And as you mentioned, I had a chance to have you on mine, and that was freaking amazing. So yeah, brother, just blessed to be here.
Yeah, likewise. Blessed to have you and grateful for you taking the time. Sounds like you're traveling. You're coming to us from a hotel in Oklahoma, I gather.
I'm in Oklahoma City today, brother. So I have to say, the people out here are so friendly. I went and had dinner last night. They were just literally, you want to talk about down to earth, salt of the earth type people. So yeah, I'm coming to you from OKC, and so I hope you hear me loud and clear. But yeah, it's been a good trip so far.
No, it sounds good. So you're out there doing some, sounds like, business consulting, working with clients.
Yeah, man. So I help businesses double or triple their revenue. That's what I've done historically. And so I have partnered up with a dental practice. Actually, I'm working on 2 dental practices this trip and a jet charter company. So I'm working with the practices this week, and then we have a combined training on Friday, and I'm even going to sneak in a little golf tomorrow with one of the owners. So it should be fun, man. And I get to do what I love doing, which is sales and leadership and building teams, and they get to build revenue. So it's been such an awesome win-win. That's really the model that I do today, and it's so much fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, as you know from our episode, my passion is life design and, people really being able to live lives that aren't just, rewarding and lucrative, but fulfilling and purposeful. And it sounds like you're a pretty good case study in that, man.
Yeah, I would say this go around, you mentioned the other companies. This company, I never actually anticipated starting Let's Go Win. You mentioned the first book, that's what I wrote. And I just figured out, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with working with people that want to live their best lives. That's literally my purpose in life. And I got to tell you, man, Let's Go Win. It allows me to do what I'm good at, because I'm only good at a couple things. I know I'm good at sales, leadership, building teams. Like, I got that figured out. You want me to be an accountant? No, man, I suck. You want me to be your chief operations officer? No, that's a bad idea. Not a good fit. But when it comes to those 3 things, I don't know. Maybe it's something that God gave me, and I just have figured out how to live my life by design, helping other companies scale their income, and then I get a small piece of equity. So it's created this amazing win-win, Jeff. And just, it's so cool to be in different industries, and the same stuff works in all kinds of industries. So it's cool.
So let's maybe pick that as our spot to drill deeper into. What would you say are the things that you encounter that are commonalities? And I'll set the frame for the question that I think a lot of businesses are founded by, subject matter experts in whatever that category of business is. Great plumbers start plumbing companies, dentists start dental companies, and they're subject matter experts in their product or service, but not in the business of running a business. So what do you see as kind of the major common threads across all these engagements where you're like, typically, if I'm going to go into a business and move the needle, it's going to come down to one of maybe a handful of these things?
Yeah, to overall, it's really getting clarity on who they are, how they behave, and what they're trying to do, which I know sounds super basic, but here's a question I ask. I can ask 1,000 companies and 999 won't know the answer. What are your values of your company? One executive will say something, the next will say something different, the third will say something completely different. And it's wild because if you think about it, if you're not clear on exactly who you are and what you're trying to accomplish, it's really hard to accomplish that goal. And my best example would be like the New England Patriots. When Belichick, they were very clear, we're going to win a Super Bowl. That's what we're doing. And they won 6 of them, Brady and Belichick, because everyone knew exactly what the goal. Everyone knew exactly what their role was. They knew exactly how they're supposed to show up and behave. And it's really basic, but most companies don't know how to do that or set it up or spend the time to do it. And so I've just found this really simple formula to go ahead, let's do those things, get everybody rowing the boat in the same direction. It's like, oh my gosh, it can't be that simple. Well, come to find out it is.
Yeah. Man, I feel like this is such a common theme to my life too, where trying to get, I don't like that terminology, trying to get, it's not like we're forcing them. It's because they want it, people want a better outcome. And so they seek guidance, right? But enrolling people into understanding that it's worth taking the time to define and operationalize things like values and vision and mission and purpose and, core beliefs and all this stuff. It just seems like we live in, and I think this is just sort of a postmodern critique, right? We live in a world that's just obsessed with doing and getting, and stopping and taking the time to think about being is very hard in the business context when it's about doing and getting. So I'm curious, how do you approach, maybe before you even get into the work of the values, how do you approach that mindset? Because my experience is a lot of times people will sort of smile and nod at these sorts of things, but then they just want to go right back to doing whatever they were doing to get whatever they were getting.
No, it's such a good point. And it's so funny. I actually say, sell them what they want and give them what they need. So to your point, I attract most of my clients by saying, we're going to go ahead and double your revenue this year. And that's all they want. Okay, great. Let's do that. Well, what that really entails is we're going to work on your leadership. We're going to work on, having work-life harmony or work-life balance. We're going to work on, but if I say all that stuff, they're going to roll their eyes and they won't even spend the time. But when I say we're going to double your revenue, they're like, okay, cool. I want to do that. Great. But that's also going to take reflection. That's going to take some of that downtime, as you've talked about. That's going to take journaling. And people are like, really? That's what I have to do? And here's my example. I didn't figure out about Let's Go Win until I did a 3-day retreat, silent meditation. I was me, a tent, a gallon of water for 3 days. And that's when Let's Go Win literally came to my brain. Now, here's the thing. I wrote about it when I was 20 years old in a journal in college. So it marinated in my head for 20 years. It didn't come out until I got silent for 3 days, not talking to anyone, just being with me and my thoughts. And the truth is, we have almost all the answers, but are you actually willing to sit, be comfortable with that silence, be comfortable with just your thoughts? And when you do that, there's a ton of power in it. But getting really highly successful, performance-driven individuals to spend that time, not always an easy task, brother.
Yeah. Do you ever get actual, active resistance in the process where somebody's like, no, you told me you were going to double my revenue and now you're trying to get me to meditate and breathe, and this is woo-woo BS, and I don't know. I mean, do people like revolt ever?
1,000%, brother. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'm having that conversation where they're like, dude, what about the nuts and bolts? We need to, what's the strategy? I'm like, look, you've been doing this for X amount of years, 10 years, 15 years, creating the same results. If you want this radical change, it's going to take a little upgrading of these things. It's going to take something different. So there's no doubt, man, we resist what we really need. We all do, by the way. I do too. I resist exactly what I need to do initially. But then if you just kind of trust the process, it's like, oh, wait, this guy or gal, whoever I'm working with, they may have something that I need. So it no question, man. I've had people screaming at me, why aren't we working on this? And this is the problem. I'm like, well, have you been trying that for 15 years? Has it worked? Yeah, I mean, it's worked, but has it doubled your revenue ever? Well, no. Let's try something new. Let's give it a shot for 90 days. Let's give it a shot for a year. And if your results continued the way they did, great. Fire me. I'll go on. We don't need to work together. But if you trust the process, ultimately, my track run is we're going to double the revenue, but it is going to look a little different than what you're used to.
Yeah, we have a concept we work with a lot where we try to. I'm laughing because it is the resistance is strong, But what we try to help people understand, and eventually I think people come around to it because you can demonstrate it over enough time in enough different ways inside of every human life where if people will take the time to reflect and consider the concept, they'll see, oh yeah, that is true. But the concept is I can gauge your intention by looking at your results. Mm. And you're coming to me saying, no, I have a different intention. My intention is to double my revenue, or my intention is to open more locations, or my intention is to make the same money but work fewer hours, or my intention is to have a better relationship with my spouse or my kids, or my intention is to drop 20 pounds and get back to my high school weight. And I say, no, it's not. No, it's not. Your intention is exactly what you have in your life right now. Mm. So if we're going to change the results, we have to change the intention. And changing the intention is not a conscious, that's the biggest thing, is intention's not a conscious thing. Intention is a subconscious driver that's based on essentially your beliefs, your values, your attitudes, and your self-conception. And here's what I can prove to you is if you were absolutely intolerant, if not just something you told yourself or a way you tried to work yourself up to feel, but I mean truly who you were at your core. And this is, I'm sure you referenced the financial thermostat setting. If who you were at your core was intolerant of the result that you're currently getting, would you still be getting that result? No, by definition, something would be different because you would not tolerate the status quo. And so until we change who you are at your core to where your tolerance shifts, you're going to continue to get what you're getting. And so I mean, that's how we attempt to sort of frame this conversation. But I do want to, and I want to get stuck here, but I just feel, I'm thinking with the audience in mind, this is, like you said, every one of us is dug in to this fallacy that somehow what we're getting in our life doesn't actually reflect who we are at this present moment. And that somehow we have some basis to expect more. The reality is we don't, because we're getting exactly what we've done to get.
Yeah, that level of responsibility or accountability, I think, scares people because they're like, no, you don't understand. Let me tell you the story of why I'm here. And the truth is, you're here, just like you said, because of your actions. We are all in the place that we're in due to take full responsibility of it. Now, what's fascinating, brother, and I knew we'd always get deep just like you did on my show, but so much of it goes back to some childhood things. And I would say trauma just because that's the word everybody knows, but it's hardwired in. So here's the great news. It's not your fault, quote unquote. Some people don't even realize that, look, man, you were given some of these beliefs. You didn't ask for them. This was given to you by your parents. What does that mean? That means we can actually rewire and upgrade your beliefs. but you got to be willing to look in the mirror and say, this is where I'm at. I own it. And once you do that, you can accomplish anything. But if you continue to put it out, it's external. It's some factor. It's the economy. It's whatever thing you want to blame. No, it's not. It is 100% on you. And when you can accept that, guess what? You can go change anything you want. So it is fascinating how often it comes down to some hardwired belief, whether you intentionally meant for you to have it or not, it's in there, and we just got to rewire it a little bit.
What do you think is the maybe handful, like 1 to 3 ultimate root causes of the resistance to accepting the truth of what we're saying?
Oh, man. Well, now when you say mom or dad gave us these beliefs, you're going after my mom or my dad?
Right.
Well, actually, here's the deal. They're not bad people. My parents are incredible. Guess what? I got some really, really crappy self-limiting beliefs handed down. And money was the greatest one for me, brother. I'll give a quick story on it. It's like, when the first time I made 7 figures in a year, you think that's a cause for celebration. I felt horrible. I felt like I wasn't worthy of it. I felt like it was bad. And that's so stupid because it's just a thing. Money is just something that is created that you can go do all sorts of great things with. But because when my dad and I would be driving by the country club, that was for the pretty people. Or somebody's driving, that was for them. And so, but his money beliefs came from his dad. And my grandfather's beliefs came from his dad. So if you think about it for a second, I'm taking beliefs that started back in the early 1900s, and I have the same money beliefs now. Do you understand how insane that is? But yet that is the hard truth of what happened, because it was constantly a negative connotation about money. It's for other people. It's for pretty people. And so when I finally realized that's all BS, it was like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Now I went to work on rewiring how, and now when I make money, a lot of money, it's like, great, I create other opportunities for people. I can give back to charities. So I know I only gave you one, but I kind of went on the whole tangent of it, but really looking and saying, you know what, mom or dad gave me some crappy stuff, and I'm not faulting them. I'm not even blaming or like, but that's kind of where it started. Now it's time to look in the mirror and say, what can we do to change it so it's not continuing down generations? Like, my kids have an abundant mindset when it comes to money, and I'm happy for that. But I'm sure I gave them some other crappy limiting beliefs that they're going to have to overcome at some point, and that's okay. That's part of the evolution.
So yeah, I definitely, I'm mapping, my experience to your experience here, and I definitely have encountered these. Yeah, just sort of general resistance of like, oh, here we go. You're going to talk about my mom and dad. Let me sit on the couch and you can psychoanalyze me. And it's almost to like trivialize the whole idea that everything we've got in our adult life has its roots in beliefs that were either set when we were kids, or we have very, very actively and intentionally challenged and rewired at some point as an adult. And in the absence of that work, how could we not just be a product of who we became as kids when all this stuff was getting installed? So yes, I've definitely encountered that one. I think there's another one that I wonder if you encounter and or would want to speak to, which is, and it's kind of a two-parter, which is a lot of times I feel like adults, they just don't want to take a step backwards. They don't want to feel like they've gone backwards, even if it's a step backwards to make a leap forwards. Like, it's just, there's this pride around not taking a step backwards. And especially it's like an embarrassment or like a social thing of not wanting to be seen taking a step backwards. And I'll share a personal anecdote of something that I've had to really look in the mirror around. And then I'd love if you could share how much, if you encounter this, and especially how you help people overcome it. In the last 2 years, I have had this evolving understanding of what the right size, structure, and product mix and infrastructure and just every aspect of my own business I've put under a microscope and changed my opinion about. And the net of that is that in the last almost 2 years, I've shrunk the company it was about 180 people down. We're down under 50 now.
Mm.
And so to the outside observer, my ego was a lot more proud to show up when I was the boss of 200 people. Now we're a smaller business. Frankly, we do less revenue. Frankly, we are almost intentionally shedding. And every day I have to deal with, honestly, how does this make me look? Mm-hmm. But in my mind, I'm playing a 20, 40, 100 multi-generational legacy game. I know what's right. But I had to, the most of the work, the harder part of the work wasn't the shrinking. It was the overcoming of ego that resisted the shrinking. So that's my experience. I wonder if you want to speak to it.
Oh, brother. I mean, this is absolutely a fascinating subject because so many people want, here's my best example. When I first started as a leader, I wanted to look a certain way, sound a certain way. I dressed a certain way. You know how hard that was? That wasn't me. I'm a jean and t-shirt kind of guy. That's just who I am. I'm a kid from Montana that I am comfortable being in jeans and t-shirt. Now that's a clothing thing, right? A suit versus a t-shirt. But the whole point was truly being authentic. Who cares what anyone else thinks? Now that's an easy statement to say. And my wife and I talk about this all the time. I genuinely don't care what people think. Now I want to be liked. Don't get me wrong. I like being liked. Everyone does. But at the end of all of this, I want to be happy. I want to be fulfilled in the work that I'm doing. It took me, I'm going to say 3, maybe 4 iterations with this current company, Let's Go Win, before I finally found, oh my God, every day I wake up and I'm like, I am jazzed to go. But during that, was I going to be, a failure if I wasn't crushing it out of the park because you sold these other businesses and this company's not making the money it was? And who cares ultimately? But I do find that all the time, Jeff, where our ego gets in the way, where we want to look this certain way to people that honestly, who cares? But it is a thing. And I hope people do find at some point, the only people that really, really matter and it really just starts with you. You got to look in the mirror and know, am I being authentic? Am I genuine? Am I fulfilled? And if you are, guess what? Great things will be created. Your relationships will be whole. But if you have this facade, even if financially, and this was my second company, I was making low 7 figures a year and I was almost 300 pounds and my wife and I were almost divorced. On the outside looking in, everybody's like, oh, this is an amazing family. Dude, it was miserable. And again, I was looking the way I thought I needed to look. I was sounding the way I needed to sound. The business was crushing it. And it was the most miserable about 5 or 6 years of my life. And then when I finally said enough of all of that, that's too much time, it's too much energy, I'm just going to be me. What do you know? My company grew even more. And so it is funny how we have all these external things that we want to impress, but really it comes down to, are you proud of what you look up in the mirror? And if you are, good, you're going to create something amazing. Otherwise, it's a facade, man. It's not fulfilling. And long term, it's not going to last. Yeah.
So, okay. That last thing you said, I feel like those were the fighting words in what you just said, right? I think everybody can agree that sacrificing your authentic self or having to live a facade, like those are not formulas for fulfillment. But I think that when you then add to it, and also you're not going to get the thing that you think you're going to get for doing it. You're not going to get the material reward. You're not going to get the success. You're not actually even going to successfully fool anyone over a long enough period of time, right? Eventually the cracks will show. Like that's where I think people resist, because I think we live in a world where and I think the retirement model, which I have strong feelings about the retirement concept. I'll spare you the history lesson. I mean, I probably went into it on your show when I was a guest, but yeah, like retirement is this fictional construct that was a political mechanism in the last couple hundred years that was invented to basically get people to defer the best part of their life. And so I think that concept has installed in the conventional mindset that like, oh no, I spend the bulk of my adult life sacrificing who I really am to play this game on the game board that's been presented in front of me to live on. And when you tell people, like, not only are you not going to feel good, but you're not even going to win the game like you think you are, unless you get authentic or do this other type of work. That's where people, I think, they resist, because they'll immediately go, well, yeah, but what about that billionaire on TV? He's such an asshole. Clearly, he's not being his authentic self, and that's why he's a billionaire. Or what about my boss at the bank, who's not very nice, but obviously he's more successful than me, and he got ahead by being a jerk. And we immediately start trying to convince you that you're wrong. And then, in fact, my formula of being someone I'm not, playing a game I don't enjoy, is actually a recipe for success. So how do you counter that viewpoint?
Yeah, I mean, the comparison thing is so fascinating, and I've fallen trapped to it many times, right? Where you're the billionaire you're talking about. It's like he or she is so successful. Well, what do you really know about what's going on? They are real people too, with real problems, and they may be completely unfulfilled. I know so many wealthy people. It's so funny because it's a scorecard, right? Wealth is a scorecard that people can look at and say, oh, they're wealthy, therefore they're happy and successful. Not often the case, unfortunately. Now, I don't care if you're wealthy or you're not. That's not the point. What I care about is what is most important to you. So, for instance, freedom is my favorite F word, and other people would argue it's another one, but freedom is 100%. That's my favorite F word. And everything I build today, not my first 3 companies, but today with this company, revolves around, is this going to give me more freedom or less? And what I mean by that is, what is financial freedom? What is the freedom to choose the life I want to choose? That's really how I gauge all of this. And so it is so fascinating, man, because the scorecard money so often comes into play. That's where people are like, well, I'm not successful until I reach X. And ask enough wealthy people, hey, is your life any better or worse than it was when you had no money? And I'll give my own example. When I had not a dime to my name coming out of college, those are some of the greatest memories I have. Now, did I have some of the cars and the houses and all the extra stuff? No. And guess what? There was a real freedom to that. I didn't have any real responsibilities. So who's winning? The 46-year-old that has all these responsibilities, or the 21-year-old that had none and just having the time of his life? Which one was actually more wealthy in terms of relationship-wise and spiritual-wise? And if you really think about it and you ask somebody, when were you most happy? And just wait for their answer, because often you won't hear right this second. And that's the crappy part, Jeff, because I know you and I are passionate about that. Live a life by design, something that really is rewarding to you. And that may mean you're a billionaire. Great. But it may not. And that's okay too. What really fulfills you? And are you happy? If you're happy, and that's the first value of my company, happy, healthy, wealthy. That's the 3. Are you truly happy? And if you're not, all right, let's go figure out a way for you to find that.
So I have a comment and then a follow-up question to what you just said. The comment I'll just share with you, and yep, this you probably do remember from my appearance on the show, that I'm obsessed with like word etymologies. I really like to know where words come from. I remember on our show, I actually think we got into the etymology of fulfillment, if I'm remembering the episode correctly. Which is a good opportunity to say to the audience, you should go listen to my appearance on JM's show on Let's Go In and see if I'm remembering right. But one of them that, like, there's been some words that I've looked up and like, okay, I really want to understand this word, and it's completely changed my worldview. This is one of them. The word own, like to own something, to be the owner of something, comes from the Old English word agan, which means to owe a debt. That owning actually means owing. And that our possessions, think about the word possess. I possess, I'm possessed. We don't own stuff. Stuff owns us. And we owe it. We owe a debt. When you talked about you were more free when you owned less, because owning something means you owe a debt of care to that thing. It's actually that thing which owns you. And that understanding that it's baked right into the language rocked me in the best way. And anyway, so I just wanted to share that viewpoint because I do think material acquisition is something people often connotate to freedom when in fact it's probably more like a cage we build around ourselves. But anyway, that's my comment. The follow-up question was, so and this is speaks to, I think, some of the challenge I face. You get hired to go into a business. You get hired in a business context, right? You don't get hired as a life coach. You don't get hired as a therapist. You get hired as a business consultant. And so then you go into the business and you start talking about, like, you're having to connect to things that I think people resist the connection, which is authenticity, fulfillment, core values, essence of self, all this, call it more touchy-feely stuff. And you're actually trying to connect it to a direct bottom line outcome of like, hey, I told you you'd double your revenue. And I assume that people are smart enough to say, well, you're going to keep the same profit margin, right? And so we're going to double your profits. And we're going to get there by doing this softer stuff, right? And that's when I think people could go, yeah, but you're telling me the rich guy isn't fulfilled. That's great. I didn't hire you to help me be fulfilled. I hired you to help me make more money. I hired you to help me be more like that rich guy in that sense, regardless of whether or not we believe that they're fulfilled or happy or not. So stay in your lane and teach me how to make money. What do you say to that?
There's a great book called The Happiness Advantage, and he talks about, does success come before happiness or happiness before success? Inevitably, it's always happiness before success, right? Now, what I can always tie it back to as well. So I lost my dad just over 2.5 years ago. And the reason I even got into the dental space is dental has the highest rate of suicide of any occupation in the country. That's how I lost my dad. And so, yes, business owner, I know why you hired me, to double your revenue. But again, I'm going to sell you what you want. That's what we're going to work on. But what you really need is to find what fulfills you, what you really, and by the way, what comes along with that is you're going to watch your happiness go up. You're going to watch your revenue go up. You're going to watch your relationship go up. And so I don't use that card, quote unquote. I don't pull that out every time. But when it comes down to it, I do let them understand, look, I really genuinely care about you as a human being, you and your relationship with your son or your daughter, your wife, or your friends. Like, that's as important as what we're working on in business, because there's a shelf life, right? And if you're running hard and you're just breaking everything and compromising everything, guess what? When you hit that mountaintop and you make the X dollars, but you lost everything along the way, you are going to be completely miserable and you won't even want to be here. That, my friend, we want to avoid. So I can easily relate it back because, again, I think of my dad every time I go to work with these folks. Is I don't want any family to go through what we went through, right? That is my driving force. And as awful as it is that I lost my dad in that way, something great is coming from it, that I'm driven to help others so they don't go through that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it certainly is. That's really a driving force for me. And I can relay the story to be like, look, man, I know you're not clear on where you want to go, or you're just clear on this money thing, but there's so much more to life than that. Let's get clear on who you are, what you want to do. And by the way, the money will come right alongside of it, but you're going to actually enjoy it instead of just making another dollar, adding a zero to your account.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for sharing that story and being open in that way. Yeah, I will say I know dentists, obviously I have one, and I've always been like, why is that? Because you hear that stat quite a bit. Like, why is it? It's just staring in people's mouths, or maybe it's causing people discomfort all the time, or I don't know. I wonder why it is that is that way for dentists. But anyway, I'll say that I try to help, because I think that I feel a kinship with you, where like we have a purview in the world where like we stand upon a certain amount of success, embodied material business success, right? which allows us an opportunity to speak to people with a certain amount of weight, or they're listening because they presumably want some semblance of something they think that we've done in our life. And so I feel like we both have an opportunity and a responsibility to really, really effectively connect, like you said, what people want and what people need. The desired material outcome with the positive, transformational, make the world a better place type of work of helping them grow as humans, and connecting those two. Because then if they'll willingly do that work on themselves, the whole world wins, right? And them too, and their families and their relationships and all those things. So what I always try to do is actually, it's kind of a sales job of like, let me handle some objections. Let me connect the need and the want so that hopefully you'll buy into this. And I typically connect it at 3 levels. I'll share this. Maybe this is of some value, but it's like, can you agree that at some level, your business success is constrained by how hard people are willing to work for you, and or how deeply people care about the work that you're paying them to do? Obviously, that's a yes. Do you think that if there's any possibility that you could transform at any level as a human such that the people around you would believe in you more, be inspired by you more, and want to work harder and care more deeply about the work that you're asking them to do? Yes. Okay. Therefore, that's a connection, right? Separately, do you think that your customer are you in a business where any part of your customer experience involves their experience of you as a person? If so, then could you transforming as a person create a materially different outcome in terms of customers' willingness to become repeat customers, customers willing to buy additional products, customers willing to refer their friends to your products or services? Yes. Okay. Awesome. We've connected those dots. And or does your product or service reflect you in terms of your creativity or your energy or your engineering or your some way that you're in, even if you're not the product or service reflects your input at some level. So could you transforming qualitatively also ultimately result in a qualitative improvement to the product or service? Yes. Okay. Boom. There you have 3 reasons. Three. And so then you say, okay, like what's the dividend going to be, right? If I implement, where am I going to get the biggest return on the investment? I don't know. And so I really do try to quantify it, I guess is my point, and make those connections direct and obvious and indisputable. Because honestly, otherwise, I mean, maybe this is selfish. Otherwise, just talking about numbers and like optimizing the production of widgets, that doesn't feel free to me. That feels like I'm in a cage that I stepped into with my client.
Hey there, it's Jeff. So real quick, I want to let you know about my text message community. I use text messages to provide unique value to the Unlock Your Potential community. These texts could just be random thoughts. It could be letting you be the first to know about an event I'm planning, maybe giving an update on a special I'm running or some free training that I host for my community. Anyway, just shoot me a text to get subscribed to the list. The number is 702-996-3926. Again, that is 702-996-3926. Let's get back to the podcast.
No, I totally agree with you. And as you're talking, you're always supposed to start with imagine if, right? And imagine a day that you could truly feel free. And I mean, no restraints in terms of your relationships and your health, and you are free to choose to do whatever you want. Imagine a day like that. That word imagine is so powerful. I actually don't use it enough. I need to more. And then so imagine if that happened, right? And then what I love that what you're saying is you're really associating to say, the word, I don't know what it was a change. It's literally why I wrote the 3rd book called Upgrade, right? Imagine if you just upgraded this. There's nothing wrong with you, by the way. That's the first thing that I wish I had learned as a coach, is that when you try to change someone, people don't like change. Hard-headed JM took me almost 20 years to figure out people don't like change. But you know what everybody loves? Everybody loves an upgrade. We upgrade our cell phones almost on a yearly basis. We upgrade. And because what we're doing is we're saying there's nothing wrong with my iPhone, 14. It's fine. But do I want the 15? Is it a little bit faster, a little bit better? Yeah. So what about just upgrading yourself? Like you talked about, would that provide you more freedom? Would that provide you more happiness? Again, nothing wrong with who you are today. You're great. But would you be willing to upgrade? It's amazing, Jeff, how people are like, yeah, I love upgrading. But when I'd say, if we change this, oh man, they're pushing back. They're like, no, dude, right. I don't want any of that because you're telling me there's something wrong with me.
I mean, I'm always sort of existentially listening behind the curtain of these episodes of like, what's the through line? What's the takeaway? What's the headline of the banner? And I feel like something about don't change, upgrade is like that's almost feels like a thematic here. I love that. Thank you. I'm totally stealing it. I wonder, another thing that comes to mind too, it's kind of like the give a man a fish, teach a man to fish thing. And I'll use a dentist as an example. Is like, hey, Mr. Dentist, look, I can go through your fulfillment systems here at this practice and probably identify 4 things that you could do to optimize or, increase margins or whatever. And that's going to pay you a 1-to-1 return, right? We make a change, you get a return. Or we can take the time to upgrade you as a business owner. Upgrade you, not just me tell you how to make it better, but upgrade your ability to see how it could be better on your own. So that even when you're not paying me, the optimization doesn't have to stop. Wouldn't it be worth it versus me telling you 4 things to change? Wouldn't it be worth it to take a few months for me to teach you how to find the next 400 things to change over the next 10 years? And I think that's maybe another way. And then I actually wonder in practice though, do you get somebody going, no, I don't want to be that guy. I just want to fix teeth.
Yeah. So one of the things I've figured out is in order for me to pick a client to actually partner with, they have to have a growth mindset. And if they don't, I've learned to just say no. Like, look, it's going to be a waste of my time. It's going to be a waste of your time. So that's one of my first like funnel things that I look for is like, all right, do they have a growth mindset? Because if you don't, you're going to hate working with me. And it's going to be reciprocal because it just doesn't work. But I totally agree with you where it's like, look, man, let's teach you how to do these things. And really having a growth mindset, in my opinion, is the basis of everything. Because I sucked, I'm sure the first time I ran a meeting. I bet you it was pretty terrible going back. If I were to go back 20 some odd years, almost 30 years, go back. It's like, I'm sure those meetings weren't great. But guess what? Over time and practicing and learning and observing, got pretty good at it. That's just having a growth mindset. I didn't realize it until Carol Dweck literally put Mindset the book. But I've realized everyone I work with, if they don't have that one thing, and if they're not coachable, so if they don't have those 2 things, we should just not even consider talking. It's just not going to work. But I totally agree because it's like, if you figure out how to upgrade, guess what? You can change your story, change your life in every single way, or upgrade your story, upgrade your life in all of these ways. But it's going to start with, are you willing to have that growth mindset? And some people are, some people aren't. And that's cool. I just want to work with the ones that are willing to have a growth mindset and suck at something and be like, okay, no problem. I can get better.
How do you, you talked about having that in your funnel process. How do you screen for growth mindset? Yeah, I'll stop there. And then I have a follow up, but how do you screen?
Fantastic question. It's all behavioral interviewing at the end of the day. Like I ask them about, their hobbies or the sports or something where they had to try something. And you'll find out in there, you talk about really language, right? You hear in the language of people if they have a real growth mindset or real fixed mindset. I grew up with a kid that was drafted number 2 in the NFL, and he had one of the most fixed mindsets I've ever seen. Wildly gifted. Arguably, he could have been one of the greatest quarterbacks ever walked the face of the planet athletically. But because his mindset was so fixed, he washed out pretty quickly. And it's one of those things where when you listen to his language back then, and even a little bit still today when I talk to them, it's pretty fixed. So, and it's one of those things where if you listen for it and you ask about something that they try, you'll hear can't, won't, don't. Those are not great words for having a growth mindset. Challenge, getting better every day. That's where I'm like, oh, okay. So you're into this growth thing. You're not opposed to sucking at something and getting better along the way.
So my mind is so trying. I'm running through all the quarterback busts in my mind, trying to. And I'm not at all going to ask. I actually have a theory, but maybe I'll ask after the show. But man, yeah, it's crazy. Okay. So do you, when you talk to someone who has a fixed mindset, is there any like remedial mechanism that you've identified? And I'm thinking, because it's like, I try never to write people off. Like, you got a fixed mindset and you're hopeless, right? So like, imagine somebody's listening to this show going, uh-oh, I think I might have a fixed mindset. Like, is there help? Is there hope for me? What can be done? So I'm curious, do you have any remediation method?
Look, we all have a growth mindset and we all have a fixed mindset. It's really just a willingness to, as you talked about earlier in the show, Jeff, to look in the mirror and go, oh, I do have a fixed mindset in that way. So is there hope for you? Yeah, 1,000%. Being able to look and say, oh, I don't have a growth mindset in this way, but I'm willing to, great, we can work on it. But trust me, I have a fixed mindset on so many things every single day. And you know who helps me? My wife, my kids. They call me on it because I give them permission to say, look, Dad is really passionate about having a growth mindset. You see it on all his goals in his bathroom mirror, everywhere. So when you hear me use some of that terminology, I want you to call me on it. So yes, anybody listening, the great news is we can all have a growth mindset and we all probably have a fixed mindset in certain ways, but just being able to recognize it and want to work on it tells me you have a growth mindset. Yeah,
it seems like, and I'm going to reference Ryan Holiday here, ego is the enemy. That like you can say, look, man, I was raised a certain way by a certain hard-ass parent type. And the reality is in our world, we got fixed mindsets. It's just who we are. Also, I don't want to live that way. Please help me. That's a humble fixed mindset versus an ego-based fixed mindset, which is like, it's fixed and also it ain't broke. So don't try to fix what's already fixed, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to stuff that way down. Like, don't pretend I don't have that bad thing. This is way down here. No, I totally agree with you. Ryan Holiday nailed that so good because it is 100%. It is the enemy of so many things.
So talk to me about, I'm always interested in the man behind the success story, man or woman. Talk to me a little bit about, how you think you've navigated your own journey. I mean, you've referenced a couple times having been maybe more fixed or stubborn in the past, or maybe less oriented towards your values or your purpose in the past. I think sometimes there's a self-deception with a lot of people that's like, I can't afford to live a life around my values or around fulfillment or around these higher order concepts until I first kick ass for the next 10, 20, 30 years or whatever, make my millions, build my financial security. And again, that speaks to this retirement, like deference of self idea. And so I'm curious for you, how much did you fall prey to that of like, well, I can't afford to be we'll call it just a better version of myself, and or becoming more open or having your values shift to where you were more open. Talk to me about that journey, if you would.
Yeah, man. I mean, during that second company, I literally almost got divorced from my wife. We were separated for a year because I was unwilling to upgrade, because I wasn't truly fulfilled.
Were you already financially successful because of the first company?
Yeah. So I'd sold that one, and the second company, we're probably making, I'm guessing 800 to $1 million, somewhere in that per year. So, financially, everything was great. Had the extra, the house, and then the extra, the cabin, and like financially, everything looked amazing. And it was actually, financially, it was great, but it was miserable. Jeff, I remember every single day I loathed going to work. And I think, I'm not sure when I read this book, but there's a great book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware. It is a book that if you want to really say, am I living my best life? Take a look at this book, because she literally does palliative care for people that are on their deathbed. And nobody says, you know what? I wish I did another board meeting. I wish I really grinded it out for more hours at the office. Not one of them said that. The top 5 regrets, and I don't remember them all, but it really was, I wish I spoke my truth. I wish that I spent more time with my family. I wish those were their wishes. And so when you pause and just reflect for a second and you say, wait a minute, I don't really want to grind it out for another board meeting. That doesn't mean anything when I'm 6 feet under. But the being with my friends, my family, and the people I care about, that is. And so it is an interesting concept where people are like, well, you got to grind, right? In order to succeed. Yes, to a degree. Yeah, you got to put in some hard work. But guess what? If you're not happy, you're going to lose everything that you're working for anyway along the way. And I almost did that. I literally almost lost my family, or, divorce. And that was not something I wanted. So I think that was when I finally looked in the mirror and said, look, man, you can do better. And it all started just upgrading my health. Let's get back to being the athlete that you were growing up. And so that all kind of was the snowball going down the hill, built on itself to where, oh, what do you know? I'm happy. Now I'm happy in my relationship. My business is growing even more. My kids and I are happy. Like, everything started with just moving my body again. It was that simple little fix that made all the change in the world.
So I'm so excited that you referenced the Bronnie Ware book. I may have mentioned Entra's. So the audience knows Entra's going through this massive transformation and pivot, and I actually alluded to that with the downsizing. But by the time this episode airs, we'll actually probably be live with our new site, designyourlife.com. And on the homepage of designyourlife.com, it says, the number one regret of the dying is having lived a life based around other people's expectations. Mm. And that is a direct citation of that book. I referenced it on the National Institute of Health website because the National Institute of Health published the research from that book. But it references her book on the site. So, I mean, that is literally like, I'll speak for me. This is why I've shifted Entra, is I want to be in the business of helping people head off deathbed regret by designing their life. So I'm so glad that you referenced that. We are almost out of time here. I want to make sure that you have at least a proper amount of space to talk about this new book. You said you've got a new book called Upgrade, and tell us about that. I think it came out last year, if I remember from the bio, but yeah, tell us about that book and where people can go get it and obviously get to know you better as well.
Yeah, brother. Thank you. Upgrade was such a simple idea. It literally hit me where when I moved, when my family from California to Florida, my wife is a Californian. She didn't want to move. She didn't want to change. But the moment I used the word upgrade, sky's the limit. Let's go. Everything's packed up. We're going across the country. So that whole idea, I realized it was like, gosh, 20 some odd years of coaching, and one word made all the difference in the world. So that book, it really was focused for business leaders to just really be aware of how they speak, and don't try to change anybody, but rather just consider an upgrade. You can find it at letsgowin.com or Amazon. All the books are there. And there's a bunch of free stuff on the website. And yeah, man, I guess what I would ultimately say is if anybody's listening, you're like, yeah, I'm interested in, doing some of these cool things and doubling my revenue, but really being fulfilled. There's 33.3 million small businesses in the country. I'm looking to partner with 3 to 6 right now. So there's a bunch of people out there that might qualify. And I'm just really interested in spending some time getting to know him. So, and brother, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I'm proud and happy for you with this redesign of your company and everything. And I love that you put Ronnie Ware's stuff right up front, because I think it's that perspective that we really all need to remember. So yeah, man, just blessed to be here. And thank you.
Well, JM, yeah, this has been a really awesome conversation. I'm kind of disappointed. It's like, well, I came on your show, then you came on my show, and like, well, there's no more shows for us to go on to talk, so we just have to come back or something. But this has been a blast. I do want to actually mention before we wrap here that the byline or the subtitle of your book, and I don't have it in front of me, but it was something about like upgrading is like the world is, I remember it says the speed of light. The world's moving the speed of light. And the only way to win for leaders is to constantly upgrade or something like that. Maybe you want to say it the right way, but.
Well, now you're putting me on the spot and I'm thinking, God, what was the exact title?
Hold on. I got it here. It's the only way leaders can win in a world moving at light speed.
Yeah. That was the marketing firm at the time that he put that, and I allowed it, obviously, but it's funny. You're not the first person to do that to me. And I'm like, shoot, what is the subtext?
I will tell you, from having published, my book back there, I remember there was like a whole meeting with the publisher and the agent and the editor about the stupid subtitle, and like nailing down the subtitle. Yeah, it was a committee decision. That's funny you referenced that. Well, JM, thank you again, man. This has been a blast. We're gonna have to figure out how to do a part 3 at some point for the two of us. And just in the meantime, I'll just end with gratitude. Thank you so much for being a great guest here.
Me too. Appreciate you, brother.
And of course, to all you viewers and listeners out there, you know what I'm going to say. You are the best part of the show. You're why we do it every single time. So grateful for your attention, and we will see you next time. Take care.
If you loved that episode, then you're definitely going to love this one. Check it out.
Don't buy this story that you haven't got any free will. You have. You're not a machine. You're not predestined. This is the way in which we now think, oh, we're all just cogs in a machine. But we are not.